This is the Sean Yankee Show.
And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Today, we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack.
This episode of the Sean Yankee Show is being brought to you by the support of viewers like me. We realize the importance of independent media and truth in this time of mass deceit and propaganda. We have decided to fight for and support it to keep it alive. You can help us in this fight for truth. Contribute at patreon.com/Sean Yankee. Thanks for coming to the show. It'll begin soon.
Hey, everybody, get in here. Welcome back to the Sean Yankee Show. I am Sean, and no matter when you're here or where you are at, you are in the right place at the right time. So settle in and get comfortable because you picked a fantastic night to come to our show. Tonight on the Sean Yankee Show is Conspiracy Theories and Chill. And we have a great one tonight. We have a great conspiracy, a great story to get into tonight. So you're going to have a great time. And I want to hear from you. I love to hear from you. So feel free to take part in the show. Comment. Let me know what you think about what we discussed. Anything you want to say. I love hearing from you. No matter when you're here, by the way. It's important and it helps us. And it's important to help this show. This show is one of the last havens left for truth in this time of mass deception. Because we put the truth first here. We believe that if it can be destroyed by the truth, then it should be. Because we live in a world where authenticity is met with rejection. Where speaking the truth is met with disdain and exclusion. And we're bombarded with messages telling us to conform and to be like everyone else. But you must resist that temptation. You must be true to yourself, no matter the cost. Because it takes courage to be authentic in a world that tells you to be fake. It takes courage to speak the truth when it's not popular. But it's the only way to create a better world. A world where everyone feels safe to be themselves and everyone is heard. So stay strong and in the full armor of God. Stand up for what you believe in. Speak the truth, even when it's hard. Be authentic when it's scary because the world needs you. So walk this earth like God sent you, spreading your light and abundance everywhere you go. Because we need individuals who are unafraid to challenge the status quo and are willing to stand up for the voiceless. So if you're feeling called to be an agent of change, I encourage you to step up. Don't be afraid to be yourself. Don't be afraid to speak your truth because the world needs you. The choice is yours. And we're all about that philosophy here. So if that sounds good to you, welcome home. You know, I wanted to go ahead and let you know we did miss Monday night. I'm sorry about that. You can probably hear it in my voice. I'm still battling a bit of a cold, but I think the worst part is over. We are on the downhill slope. I'm just fighting it a little now. Monday night, I just couldn't have done it. I was way too congested and just stuffy and coughing. I couldn't talk without coughing. So we had to cancel, and we missed a pretty important night because Monday night we do hindsight news, which is very important. We sift through the bullshit and try to figure out what's really going on with the agenda out there in the mainstream. And then we talk about ourselves. We do Monday motivation, which is probably the most important part of the whole week. So I'm sorry that we missed that. We couldn't avoid it. There's no way to avoid it. Babels wanted me to run a rerun, but I'm like, how do you do that? How do you run a rerun for news night? Motivation, we could have did. I could have came on and coughed my way through a short intro and did a little motivation video. But I just felt like the best thing to do was to cancel. I hope you caught the morning yank, though. We did have a really good morning yank. That went really well. And then we will get to at least attack the bullshit and all that on Friday night with Yankee Ranch. So come back on Friday night for that. But tonight on the show, we have a really interesting story to get into. The Yuba County 5, the mystery of the Yuba County 5. That's what we're going to be getting into on Conspiracy Theories and Chill tonight. And it is a fascinating story that I know you're going to love. But hello to everyone here on Rumble. Looks like so far in the comments on Rumble, we got Blazer F and Sweet Ray. Hello to you guys on Rumble. That's our most important platform. If something happens on Facebook, you know where to find us. But hi to everyone here on Facebook as well, and Twitter, X, whatever, and all the platforms we go up to later on. Anywhere you're at, hello to you. Please take part in this show. I love hearing from you. But just support us. Share us out. Hit that like button. All that really helps. It really does. And if you can, become a patron of our show on patreon.com/Sean Yankee. That I would really appreciate. But if you guys are ready, we got a lot of stuff to get into. We have a big topic tonight, and it is our most important night. So in just a minute, we're going to start out, but let me say hi to everybody. Yeah, I'm feeling better. A little bit. I still sound stuffy, I'm sure, but I can breathe through my nose, which is weird. So like the front of my face feels swollen, but there's nothing there. Happy birthday. It's Lisa's birthday today, so you get a Conspiracy Theories and Chill on your birthday. Yeah, Babels wanted me to take a Rona test, but I was like, I don't need to. I know I've got it. I probably got double Rona. I know I've got the Rona. The Rona lay you out. Hey, Harsh. How you doing? I know you smashed them shits, Harsh, and I know you're ready for a really good conspiracy. I hope you guys are too. Because we're going to get started in just a second. But take part. Take part in the show. I love hearing from you. Anything you want to say about what we get into tonight. And then you know how it is. We can go any direction. If something makes you think of something else, bring it up. I love hearing from you. And that goes for everybody on every platform and those watching later on. But if you're ready, it's Wednesday night. And Wednesday night is our best night. And it's time to get started. If you're ready, let's get ready. Let's get into it. It's time for Conspiracy Theories and Chill.
The frigid night of February 24th, 1978 would be something Joseph Shones would never forget. It was perhaps the most terrifying moment he experienced in his entire life. The 55-year-old was heading up a treacherous, snowy mountain road in Northern California. Heading up to check the skiing conditions at his lodge, he quickly found himself trapped in the snow. Things would only get worse for Joseph from here. While trying to free his Volkswagen Beetle to no avail, Joseph felt a sudden tightness in his chest that was quickly building, growing into an unbearable, searing pain. He realized he was alone, stuck, and having a heart attack. Freezing and panicking, he quickly jolted back in his car and kicked the heater on to warm up. He hoped someone passing by would be able to transport him to safety, but what happened next wasn't anything like he expected. Joseph had been trapped for 6 hours straight when he noticed a dim light beginning to seep into his car. Had he grown so delirious that he was hallucinating? Before he could think about what was happening, he was engulfed in light. Headlights were beaming in from behind him. Joseph was relieved. He thought he was finally going to be rescued from this nightmare. But then something bizarre happened. Peering up, he spotted 6 people getting out of the car. He noticed one of them appeared to be holding a baby. Joseph was bewildered, but he didn't have time to question why these people would be deep in the snowy mountains late at night. After what he felt like an eternity of being confined in his car, he was growing frantic and delirious. He cried out for help. For a moment, it was completely silent. Then, oddly enough, he saw the car's headlights abruptly go out. Now blanketed in pitch darkness, Joseph was baffled and had no clue what was going on. His mind was reeling. Why would they ignore his cries for help? Were the mysterious visitors going to just leave him there to die? The sight of flashlight beams startled him from his morbid thoughts, and he was hit with a pang of relief. For good measure, he shouted for help again, but something was very wrong. Just like before, the lights went out. Trapped in the confines of his car, Joseph lay completely helpless. Whoever had pulled up behind him had no intentions of saving him. They were lurking somewhere outside of his vehicle, and for reasons unknown to this day, they were ignoring him. Things only got creepier from here. They got closer. Joseph heard an ominous whistle from outside his car. This time, instead of relief, it filled him with dread. But the whistle faded away and it grew silent once again. Joseph lay defenseless and alone. Eventually, he ran out of gas and it was getting unbearably cold. Joseph had no other choice than to enter the snow flurry and seek help on his own. He cracked open his door and felt the biting cold of the night stinging his face. Aside from the crunch of his shoes reluctantly stepping onto the snow, it was eerily quiet and pitch dark. Whoever had been outside his car was now completely gone. Joseph then marched 8 miles to a cabin where he was able to finally find some help. He was taken to a hospital for treatment and recovered. But what he didn't realize is he may have been the last person to ever see the Yuba County 5 alive. Located in Northern California along the Feather River, Yuba County is home to miles of open wilderness, mountainous slopes, and budding families. However, 5 Yuba County local families were forced to experience the dreaded pain of their loved ones mysteriously disappearing in the night one cold winter evening in 1978. Unexplained missing person cases are typically reserved for younger children or adults traveling alone or with one other person, which is why this case is so disturbing. What made the disappearance of the Yuba 5 so bizarre was that 5 adult men managed to vanish in the thin air without any solid explanation. To this day, this case remains unsolved. The night of the disappearance. Bill Sterling, Jack Madruga, Jack Hewitt, Ted Wire, and Gary Mathias were lovingly referred to as the Boys. Aged between 24 and 32, 4 of the group had mild intellectual disabilities while Gary was diagnosed with schizophrenia and had violent tendencies. Unlike the other boys, Gary wasn't intellectually challenged. According to the Yuba County Lieutenant Lance Ayers, some of the boys had IQs as low as in the 40s. The 5 friends had all met one another through an organization called Gateway that provided a community for individuals with special needs to engage in various activities and events. The boys' favorite activity in particular was basketball. On the fateful evening of February 24th, 1978, the boys had gone to watch a basketball game together at California State University in Chico, 50 miles away from their Yuba County homes. The 5 basketball fanatics were also scheduled to play a Special Olympics sponsored game together for their own team, the Gateway Gators, the following day. They couldn't wait. They were so excited about their upcoming basketball game that a few of the boys even laid their uniforms out the night before heading to Chico. Gary was incredibly eager to play their upcoming game, reminding his mother to not let him oversleep the next morning. They wouldn't have missed it for the world. but no one could have possibly expected what would happen later that night. On Ted's way out the door, his grandmother insisted that he take a coat with him, but he refused. "Oh, Grandma, I don't need a coat," Ted said. "Not tonight." The 5 men piled into Jack's prized Mercury and took off out into the cold, snowy night, never to be seen alive again. William Lee Sterling, aka Bill. Originally from Yuba County, William Lee Sterling, often called Bill by his friends, was 29 years old. He was described by many as being deeply spiritual and can often be found reading religious texts that he would share throughout mental hospitals, hoping to help other patients find faith. He had been diagnosed with mild developmental disabilities and lived with his parents for necessary support. Some strangers, however, had taken advantage of his disabilities. Back when he was a dishwasher at Beale Air Force Base, airmen would frequently persuade him to get drunk so they could steal Bill's money. Bill also was not very fond of the outdoors. After just one fishing trip with his family, he never wanted to go ever again. Jack Madruga. Jack Madruga was 30 years old and a close friend with Bill. Jack was a high school graduate who had served in the U.S. Army. In more recent times, however, he had been working on a factory line where he was eventually fired. Although Jack had no official diagnosis, his family believed him to have mild learning disabilities. He drove a turquoise and white 1969 Mercury Montego, which was his pride and joy, and he also lived with his family. Jack Hewitt was the youngest of the group, aged 24 years old, and also the most severely handicapped of the entire group. He hated being away from home for any extended period of time. He had been diagnosed with mild learning disabilities and was best friends with Ted Wire. The two of them were often described as brothers, and they took to doing most things together. Theodore Earl Wire was 32 years old. He had attended Marysville High School and was described by others as a friendly guy with a reputation for relentless positivity. He also lacked basic common sense, having once spent over $100 for pencils for absolutely no reason at all and didn't understand why you had to stop at stop signs. He'd wake me up in the middle of the night and say, "How come Mickey Mantle can hit the ball farther than me?" his brother Dallas Wire said. Despite his challenges, he was outgoing and had been working in a snack bar, though his family had urged him to quit on account of the stress levels they felt he suffered due to his learning disabilities. Gary Dale Matthews was age 25. He wore thick glasses which were prescribed for his extremely poor eyesight. He was a U.S. Army veteran but had been discharged due to psychiatric reasons in 1973 while serving in Germany. He was later diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, a condition that once gave him endless behavioral trouble and resulted in occasional, very violent outbursts. After treatment, he had been able to control his illness and learn to cope with the help of daily medication. At the time of his disappearance, Gary had lived a fairly stable life with schizophrenia over the past 2 years and had even started working part-time as a laborer for his father-in-law's small landscaping business.
So these boys, they all go out together to go to a basketball game and never return. And they have a basketball game of their own the next day that's very important to them. And somehow they get sidetracked and get way off course, which we'll get into later, and never return home. But welcome back to Conspiracy Theories and Chill. This is the mystery of the Yuba County Five. Babas chose tonight's tale. And that's what this one is. It's a mystery. This case remains unsolved. And we're going to explore the evidence and theories and come to our own conclusions of what happened to the Yuba County Five. Now, this story reminded me a bit of the Dyatlov Pass incident. And that's one we may cover in the future. If you're interested in seeing that, let me know. But that incident occurred in the 50s in Russia, where 9 highly experienced hikers went out but did not arrive at their destination. Once a search party was formed and the bodies were found, the circumstances under which they were found was truly baffling. You had people with clothes, some without, people that were mildly radioactive, people missing body parts, and none of the official explanations made sense. It almost seemed like something had attacked them, but we had no idea what it was. That was unsolved as well, and that mystery has endured for decades. And tonight's story is often referred to as the American Dyatlov Pass incident because you have a group of people that go missing and are located under unexplained conditions. And just like the Dyatlov Pass incident, for the most part, we know what happened. We just don't know why. We don't know why it happened, why they were even there. Like, we'll get into that later on too. Hey, Gabe. Our show ambassador, Gabe, is in the house. Everything can begin now. So, yeah, it was 4 mentally handicapped individuals, some with IQs as low as 40, and then one man that was schizophrenic. He was the only one that really stood out from the group. A lot of people don't really understand how he got into the program that the other boys met under, but he was said to be on his medication and doing well as a patient, and it was rare for him to hang out with the boys, but not super rare. It wasn't odd. He was on the basketball team, so it would have made sense for him to be getting ready and going out with them that night to go watch the team play. But we're going to get into more of what took place that night. The next clip that we're going to watch is going to go into more detail about the events of this evening with these boys going out. They were just going to see a basketball game. Like, the one boy didn't even want to take a jacket. His grandma tried to get him to take his jacket, and he's like, I don't need it, Grandma. So they're just going to a basketball game, coming right back. They intended on being back. They had their clothes laid out for a basketball game the next day. Yeah, Diane, you're right. Most of the country's IQ is that low right now. There's lots of people walking around with a 40 IQ, or that would like to have a 40 IQ. The nighttime is the right time. Pear juice? I did not know this. Pear juice is good for a cough? I'm going to have to get me some pear juice. I kind of am over the cough, though. Right now, I just have the little bit of congestion. And I was really weak yesterday. Yesterday, I slept most of the day. I rested all day yesterday. I don't know how many hours I slept, but a lot. And I must have needed it. So I was still a little tired today. I took me a good nap. But I'm lucky enough to be able to do that right now because I'm on vacation. Well, it's a staycation, but it's still a vacation. I'm getting paid to sit and do nothing. Nothing but get ready for tonight's show. Well, yes and no. I spend a lot of time thinking about that because I don't think that people that are aware that they are. I think if you're ignorant, you're not aware that you are. And you're blissfully happy. But maybe that's not true. There's no real way to know. You don't know what that experience is actually like unless you do. And if you do, you're probably not able to explain it very well. It's quite a paradox there. It does seem like it would force you into a simpler existence, though. But anyways, these, for the most part, there was one boy that I think was, more handicapped than the others. And let me see if I got his name right here in front of me. Jackie Hewitt was probably the most handicapped. And his parents even said that of all 5 of the boys. Like I said, one of them would have been highly functioning. He was just really schizophrenic. And then there was at least one other that was in the military. He was released for being handicapped. But Sweet Ray thinks that maybe the schizophrenic snapped. We're going to get into that. We're going to cover that coming up. That is going to be one of the things we look at. See, I agree with you, Leanne. I don't think it always is, But I want to continue on. We got a lot to look at here. So I want to get into more of what took place that night. So we're going to get into that right now. So this is the mystery of the Yuba County 5. And let's look at more of what took place that evening.
Further into the night of the disappearance, the boys were giddy once the game ended. Their favorite team had reigned victorious. They had got back into Madruga's car and drove a short distance from the campus to Bears Market in downtown Chico, planning to sink their teeth into some treats to celebrate. It was shortly before the store's 10 p.m. closing time, and the clerk distinctly remembered them because she resented that such a large group had come in and delayed her from starting the process of closing up shop. Little did she know she would be the last person to ever see them alive. Loading up on Hostess pies, candy bars, and all sorts of sweets, the boys piled back into Jack Madruga's Mercury Montego and hit the road. That night, some of the men's parents stayed up to make sure they returned. But when morning came and they had not, police were notified. They quickly came upon their first clue. It was utterly bizarre and just didn't make any sense. Upon beginning the investigation, the police received a tip from a local ranger who had found a car matching the dispatch description. It was a turquoise Mercury Montego parked off the side of the road, east of the location of the college basketball game the men had attended. It was Jack Madruga's car. But Jack Madruga's car wasn't parked in just any location. Somehow, they had ended up 70 miles away from the basketball game on a remote, bumpy mountain road winding through the Yuba County mountain range. Madruga was completely unfamiliar with this area. It made absolutely no sense why they had been out there. Something that no one can explain to this day is what in the world could have possibly lured the boys so far from the game. Things only managed to get more and more eerie from there. The car was left unlocked with one of the windows rolled down, which was incredibly odd considering the freezing night temperature and constantly falling snow. The wrappers from the snacks the men had bought at Bear's Market the night before were the only trace left of the 5 friends. They lay scattered around the vehicle, but the boys were gone. One half-eaten candy bar seemed to have been dropped in a hurry in the back seat. The keys to the car were also missing. For no explainable reason whatsoever, the boys had abandoned the safety and warmth of their car for the freezing cold and snow outside. Even more strange was the fact that Madruga's car was in perfect working condition. When the police hotwired it to see if they had experienced engine trouble, they found that it started the very first time without a hitch. In fact, the car still had a quarter tank of gas, which would have provided the boys heat in the event that it had gotten stuck. But it didn't seem that they had gotten stuck at all. Despite the evidence in the snow that the wheels had spun for some time, it easily drove out of the low drift. Why had the 5 men chosen to abandon a safe, warm vehicle in the middle of a rural, wintry terrain in the middle of the night? Under further inspection, investigators noted that there was no damage to the undercarriage of the vehicle. This led them to believe that the men had driven extremely carefully along the bumpy, pot-filled track before seemingly abandoning the vehicle and disappearing into the night, poorly dressed for the cold mountain conditions. "Oh, Grandma, I won't need a coat," Ted said. "Not tonight." The search. Immediate search efforts proved fruitless as the dangerous winter conditions continued to worsen for weeks after the men's disappearance. Snowstorms were rolling in, and fast. Rescue teams were putting their lives at risk combing the nearby area for any signs of the boys in the ever-deepening snow. The searches were called off to wait for safer weather, but time continued to press on with no signs of the missing boys. As the families of the men grew more and more concerned over the disappearances of their sons, witnesses and potential leads began to trickle in. From here, the story only grew more and more creepy. After seeing the report of the 5 missing men and their car, Joseph Shones came forward and admitted to seeing a turquoise and white Mercury Montego around 20 yards down the road from his own vehicle the night he had a heart attack. Perhaps the lights Joseph saw that night belonged to the 5 men wandering away from the safety of their own vehicle before vanishing into the woods. But why would the boys just ignore Joseph's cries for help? If Joseph truly spotted the men that night, who was the 6th person he spotted getting out of the Mercury Montego, the woman with a baby? Ted's mother was quick to report to police that ignoring someone's pleas for help was not like her son, if indeed he had been present. She recalled how Ted and Bill had once helped a friend get to the hospital after overdosing on Valium. If the group had also been in trouble that night, why would they have kept quiet when they happened to stumble upon Joseph?
A second witness later came forward stating that she had seen the boys. The woman was a store clerk at Mary's Country Store in Brownsville, just 30 miles southeast of where Madruga's car was discovered. She reported seeing 5 men matching the photographs released by the police at around 2 p.m. on Saturday, February 25th. Jack and Bill, she claimed, were using a phone inside the store while the others sat in a red pickup truck in the parking lot outside. The story was confirmed by her boss, and the police found her to be a credible witness. but the families weren't exactly sure. They stated Jack had an extremely intense aversion to speaking on the phone. They couldn't possibly believe it was him talking on a phone inside the store. His brother even said that he often took most of Jack's phone calls from his group of friends because he was so uncomfortable with the interaction. The boys remained lost with no leads for close to another 4 months after that bizarre winter night. On Saturday, June 4th, an incredibly disturbing discovery was made. A group of weekend bikers were out riding their motorcycles when they stumbled upon an abandoned forest trailer park deep in the woods. Hoping for a quick break from riding, they instead discovered something repulsive. Pulling the rusty trailer door open, they were immediately hit by a stomach-turning stench. According to then Yuba County Undersheriff Beecham, when you got up in that area, you could smell the death. It was horrible, that stench. After taking a moment to catch their bearings, they had to take a closer look. On the bunk bed lay a body wrapped in 8 layers of blankets that even covered the head. On the bedside table sat an engraved Ted ring, necklace, and wallet alongside a gold watch. It was Ted Wire. He wore no shoes. In fact, his shoes were gone. His feet had been badly frostbitten and were becoming infected. His pants were rolled up to his knees, and it was clear 5 of his toes were missing. Police estimated from his weight loss and hair growth, Ted had somehow survived for up to 13 weeks in the freezing trailer before slowly starving, freezing, and dying of exposure and pulmonary edema. But this wasn't even the strangest part of the discovery. Now this is where the story gets simply unbelievable. This trailer park was almost 20 miles uphill from the abandoned car. This meant that some way, somehow, Ted would have walked almost 20 miles in thick snowdrifts up to 6 feet just to reach the park. Evidence in the trailer was thoroughly searched, but rather than piecing the puzzle together, things only managed to get more and more perplexing. You see, the trailer was ample with supplies that could have easily saved Ted's life. It was simply baffling. The supplies lay unused and absolutely useless. Despite the fact that Ted was freezing in the biting cold of winter, the thick forestry clothing that could have warmed him remained untouched. There were matches in the trailer and a collection of paperback books that could have easily been used for kindling, but no attempts at starting a fire had even been made. Even more curiously, there was a full butane tank that had not been switched on to warm the frigid trailer. The only thing Ted seemed to manage to crack into was a nearby storage shed, but investigators quickly realized that Ted couldn't have been the only one in the trailer. First of all, based on the grisly decay of Ted's feet, there was no way he could have pulled the blankets all around himself without experiencing agonizing pain. Second of all, 31 sea ration cans from the shed lay empty. These sea ration cans were opened with a P38 can opener. This is the same exact type of can opener that only Gary and Madruga would have been familiar with using, thanks to their experience in the Army. Ted simply couldn't have been alone. The other boys, or at least a couple of them, must have also made it here, and there was absolutely no reason Ted should have starved and froze to death. If they had simply peeked into a locker in the same exact shed they found the sea ration cans, they would have discovered an incredible amount of dehydrated food that would have fed all of them for over a whole year. Investigators then discovered Gary's sneakers in the trailer, but could find no other sign of him anywhere nearby. Police speculated that perhaps Ted took Gary's sneakers even though they were way too big for him, leaving Gary with Ted's sturdy leather shoes. Ted had starved and froze to death surrounded by food and potential warmth for reasons that will forever remain unknown. However, according to his family, it wasn't surprising that Ted didn't take advantage of the readily available food and heat sources. They recalled that one night, their house caught on fire. In the midst of escaping the blaze and suffocating smoke, they had to drag Ted out of his bed. He did not want to miss his job the next day. Investigators discovered one item of great interest in the abandoned trailer. The discovery of a gold watch alongside Ted's body was a piece of evidence investigators felt was crucial. Could it prove that foul play had been involved in the disappearance of all 5 men? Unfortunately, the gold watch was a complete mystery. Upon closer inspection, family members all agreed that the watch did not belong to any of their boys. No solid evidence was gathered to prove anything more, and it was impossible to tell when the watch might have been left at the trailer. Despite the fact it was discovered at the same time as Ted's body, it does not mean that it was left there around the same time.
Okay, there's a lot of weird stuff already, and we're just barely nicking the surface here. So let me look at what you guys are saying here. Robert thinks that they must have picked up a hitchhiker. Well, I mean, maybe, but I've found no evidence of that. Lolly had asked if a woman had gone missing, a woman and a child, because that was an interesting detail. I was wondering if anyone else had caught that. The woman and the baby. That comes up a lot, there being a woman and a baby here. But no, I didn't find anything about any other missing people. There was no one else tied to this. And it's very interesting, like the gold watch. What do you think's going on with that? Where did the gold watch come from? Why would that be found with the only body they found in the trailer? Why does he have a gold watch there that ties to none of the other people? Why did Gary leave his shoes? You know, Gary's not there, but his shoes are. Did he find other shoes in the trailer that he was able to use? Maybe there were snow boots or something. I don't know. Why are his shoes still there? Where did Gary go? Why is he not there? How did they get 20 miles away from their car? You got to remember, only one of these people has any survival training, Gary. He's got military training, and he's also not as handicapped as the other boys. But it'd be hard for me to understand, first, how they got so diverted, how they ended up on that road to begin with. It was way out of the way of where they were heading. They were trying to head home to make it to their basketball game the next day. It was way out of the way. They stopped for snacks, and then after that, everything goes sideways. What happened when they stopped for snacks? Everything was normal then. That's on their regular route. Everything after that, out of the ordinary. And then the window down on the car. I feel like that's really weird. It's a really weird detail. This car was his baby, pride and joy, his favorite thing. But he's going to leave a window down on it when they abandon it? And why abandon the car? The car still had gas in it. Now, maybe he wasn't able to maneuver the car out of the spot it was in. He did have driving training. He was a driver in the military, but he did get discharged. Maybe the wheels were skidding out and he thought he was stuck, and they abandoned the car. Why wouldn't he roll up the window? Why wouldn't they push it more out of the way? It doesn't seem right. Something seems wrong about that. So let me see. I went through my notes. Everything seemed to have been fine till they stopped for snacks. Did they run into the woman and the baby then? When they stopped for the snacks? Did something happen there? That's also the last person to see them alive, besides Joseph Shones, who we'll get to in a little bit. We're going to get back to him. The guy that had the heart attack, we're going to have to get back to him. But right now I want to get into where the other boys ended up. So they found these boys in weird circumstances. So let's get on to where they found them. So this is finding the other boys.
Just 2 days later, after the discovery of Ted, there was another grim find deep in the woods. The skeletal remains of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling were found only 4.5 miles south of the abandoned trailer, just off the road. It appeared they had tried to make it through the heavy snowdrifts with Ted, Gary, and Jack Hewitt, but failed. Madruga's car keys still remained in the pocket of his pants. His cause of death was ruled to be the result of hypothermia and exposure, but Bill's cause of death was unable to be determined. All that was left of Bill was a few scattered bones. Investigators didn't think it was a good idea that Jack Hewitt's father joined them on this grisly recovery mission, but Jack was determined to bring his son home one way or another. He insisted on joining them during the search. 2 days later, They were combing the woods yet again, looking for the still missing Jack Hewitt and Gary Mathias. That's when Jack Hewitt Sr. saw something out of the ordinary not far from the trailer, a jacket laying in the snow. Rushing to pick it up, his son's spine fell out of the jacket onto the forest floor. His bones were, again, scattered. Just feet away sat Jack Hewitt's skull. Had Jack Hewitt also failed to traverse the snowdrifts to the trailer, leaving Ted and Gary the only two to make it there? Or had he made it there and wandered out to die? Despite continued searches, no remains of Gary Mathias were ever found. Police put out descriptions to all local hospitals and mental health facilities, but no information ever surfaced to help locate him. If he was still alive, he had been surviving with no money, no identification, and crucially, no medication for his schizophrenia. But roughing it wouldn't have been something new to Gary. Back in 1975, Gary had suddenly abandoned his schooling efforts at Yuba College and moved to Oregon to live with his grandmother. His mother and stepfather begged him over the phone to return home, but Gary simply hung up on them. That's when something incredible happened. Weeks later, his family opened their door to find a disheveled and grimy Gary. He had somehow managed to travel on foot over 540 miles from Portland, Oregon to Marysville, California. According to Gary, he stole milk and ate dog food to stay alive. In another instance, when Gary was admitted to a state mental hospital, he managed to somehow escape by squeezing through a drain pipe. He then made it all the way back to Marysville by hitchhiking, still in his hospital attire. Gary Mathias remains a missing person today, and no more information to his whereabouts have surfaced since his tragic disappearance along the mountainside that mysteriously took the lives of his 4 friends. Could Gary have gone on another unbelievable trek throughout the mountains, ending up in such a remote location that he will simply never be found? One of the biggest questions that still remains is how the 5 men managed to somehow end up on the mountainous roadside to begin with. Authorities later learned that Gary had friends in the small town of Forbstown, and police believe that it was possible that, in an attempt to visit them on the way back home, the men may have taken a wrong turn near Oroville that put them on the mountain road. However, the men's own families stated that they do not believe the boys would have ever voluntarily ventured onto the mountain road on account of their dislike of the great outdoors and tendency to stick rigidly to habits. Jack Madruga's mother, Mabel, even said there was some force that made them go up there. They wouldn't have fled off into the woods like a bunch of quail. We know good and well that somebody made them do it. Furthermore, why had the men felt the need to abandon a perfectly running car, a car that Jack Madruga considered to be his most prized possession? Why had the men then trekked a further 20 miles up a mountain hillside to reach a trailer park rather than turn around and go back the way they came? And when they arrived, why had they hardly touched the food in the trailer park locker? Riddled with endless unanswered questions, the mysterious disappearance of the Yuba County 5 has haunted the lives of family, friends, and locals for years. Will the last missing man ever be discovered? Are there more answers to what happened on that night in 1978 that were lost beneath the blanket of snowfall that winter? But the mystery didn't end there. This is where it gets really creepy. It was only 3 weeks after the Yuba County 5 vanished when Yuba City woman Debbie Lynn Reese received a series of phone calls she'll never forget. The first call was incredibly chilling. "Hello?" Debbie answered. On the other end of the line, a man stated coldly, "I know where the missing 5 men are." He abruptly hung up. This shocking phone call no doubt shook Debbie to her core, but it didn't stop there. The next day rolled around and yet again, the phone rang. Debbie answered. "Hello?" He answered, and startled, she realized it was the same man. "I need help because I really hurt those guys bad." "Who did you hurt?" Debbie asked, rattled. "Don't play dumb with me." He hung up. It still wasn't the last time she would hear from the man. Another day later, another phone call. "Those 5 guys are all dead." "They're all dead?" Debbie repeated. "They're all dead." The mystery man hung up and was never heard from again. Unsolved Mysteries contacted the boys' families so they could make an episode covering the bizarre case of the Yuba County 5. But it just didn't work out. According to the Sacramento Bee, curiously, every family agreed. Every family except Gary's. In a bizarre twist, this raised suspicion, particularly from Dallas Wire, Ted's brother. That's just suspicious. I'm not saying they knew, but, well, you could probably guess what I think, Dallas stated. When asked if he believes Gary set the 4 others up to die, he said that's the only thing that makes sense. The Sacramento Bee attempted to contact Gary's surviving family members for comment. All of his siblings either declined to comment or were unable to be reached. Jack Beecham, former Yuba County Sheriff, also seems to agree that something is suspicious about Gary. According to the Sacramento Bee, they were either forced or manipulated, Beecham stated. And where does Matthias come into that? Maybe he had nothing to do with it. We'll never know, but I think he did. I know parents at the time told us, they told me personally, that they had deep concerns about Gary being involved in this. They were unabashed in their opinion in telling me that, Beecham said. The other 4 were always together. They walked a lot of places together, always together, and he was just a different personality type. He didn't meld with the other 4, according to the parents. Even the case file seemed to put an emphasis on Gary. They suggested that Gary would typically be the most likely member of the group to, quote, lead and suggest places to go or things to do. Even the boys' basketball coach said he felt Gary could possibly flip out at any time. To this day, it is unknown how Gary was even able to enter the Gateway program. He didn't have intellectual disabilities like the other boys. But the final disturbing detail regarding Gary was his own prediction of his future. Now this part is really weird. According to Gary's longtime friend, Janet, Gary repeatedly told Janet that he had a dream where he and several other people would disappear. Janet stated that Gary was a very violent person, hurting several men seriously, and said that he also hates women. Regardless of the mystery behind their disappearances, this strange case of close friends is a truly tragic end to a night that should have been nothing but fun.
So, again, a lot of fingers being pointed at Gary. A lot of people think that Gary's the one that did it. Like Leanne is leaning towards Gary right now. Sounds like he snapped, she said. He could have killed them, left them for the wild animals to eat. It's true. It could have been Gary. And Gary's shoes were found at the trailer. And Gary was never found. Did he get away with it? Did he kill the other boys in a schizophrenic rage? A lot of fingers being pointed at Gary. The phone calls are weird. That was a detail that I felt was really weird. Hold on. I've been smoking and it's got me coughing. It's not the Rona, Robert. It's not the Rona, it's the Marorona. I've been smoking. That's why I sound like I'm about to start coughing. But the phone calls are really creepy. I know where they are was the first phone call. And then I need help. I hurt these guys. It sounds like somebody that did something and then doesn't know what to do about it. Doesn't know what to do about what they've done. Like Samuel's saying, maybe he sacrificed them. And Lolly, they still haven't explained the woman and the baby. We got to get to the woman and the baby. We still haven't got into that. What happened to them? Where did they come from? And then there's other details that we haven't gotten back to, like the red truck. What's going on with that? But these phone calls. The second one was, I need help. I hurt these guys. And then the last phone call was, these 5 guys are dead. They're all dead. This sounds like somebody that did something and is remorseful of it, reaching out. Now, the story with Gary, that one story of him going to his grandma's and then hanging up on his parents when they called and asked him to come back, but then walking on foot the 500 miles. I'm sure his parents would have made arrangements for him to come home. He didn't want to come home. And then all of a sudden he just walks 500 something miles, survives on dog food and stolen milk. That's a little weird. That's a weird detail. And then, all of the other parents talking about how someone had to make them do this. they would not have missed that basketball game. You know, I understand how important things like that are to people that are passionate about them. And they were very passionate about basketball. They would have been very upset about missing that. They had their clothes laid out. They already told their parents not to forget to wake them. They were just going to watch this other game. They would have been home in plenty of time to get rest, to get up for the basketball tournament. It makes no sense for them to miss that. It was too important to them. So all that's weird. And then how they ended up 20 miles away from the car. How did they end up there? And I wonder how they found this trailer. So when you look at a map of the area here, this trailer was a couple trailers. It was two different trailers and then a couple sheds with food and rations and all that. It seems a little too perfect for them to find this, although even after they found it, they didn't take advantage of it. There was heat. There was propane tanks and stuff outside. They could have had lights. They could have had electricity. And, you know, one of the people that survived, at least his shoes were there in the trailer, knew this stuff. Should have. He had military training. There's evidence in the trailer where they were found that they were eating the rations. And then it was a P something can opener, the military can opener. That would have been hard for the other gentleman to use. But Gary had military training. He would have known how to get into sea rations. I agree with you, Sandy. The gold watch is a clue. The gold watch is interesting. Where did the gold watch come from? It didn't belong to any of the boys. What friend, Lolly? Lolly said, who had the friend and what's their background? Who owned the trailer? The trailer, I think, is... I have to look into this a little deeper now, but I assumed it was like it owned by the state or something, like a survival like area. I got to look into it deeper now. I don't know. I don't know who owned the trailer. It seemed to me like it was some kind of official, like park ranger type of station. It had survival rations and heat and all that in two different sections. Damn it, Sandy. I wish you'd have been with me when I was looking into this. That's a really good question. I got to look into that. Who owned this damn trailer? Because that is a little suspicious. This trailer in the middle of nowhere that's stocked, like packed with resources. Because there was stuff, not only was there food, and there was more food. There was more food than what they found. There was months worth of food. And then enough supplies to keep them alive. And damn it, there was something more here. Clothing, blankets, all kinds of things. It's odd. Stuff for creating fires. They didn't take advantage of that, but there was stuff like firewood and things like that. All kinds of survival tools just left out in the open for them. But is it really left out in the open for them? It's 20 miles away from their car. How did they even know to go there? How did they find it? How did they know it was there? What are the odds of them finding something like that? I'm kicking myself for not finding this out, Sandy. I'm mad at myself. I should know this. Who owned that damn trailer? I'm going to find out during the next video clip. I'm going to get back to you on this. Lolly said, I thought they said one had a friend near that they might have gone to see. Gary. Wait, I'm getting their names messed up. Gary had a friend nearby, a friend 4 miles away from the basketball game that they may have diverted off to go see. But that still wouldn't take them to this mountain road. Even if they went and saw Gary's friend, it doesn't explain why they were up on this mountain road. There's no reason for them to be up here. None. And even if they got lost. Because like one of the explanations goes into, well, maybe they got lost. But like I said, he was a driver in the military. I think after a while, he would have realized he took a wrong turn. But we'll get into more of that here coming up. We're going to get into that. I'm going to show you even the exit that they missed. I'm going to show you all that so you can see and make your own conclusions. But what we got to get into next is Joseph Scones. Shones. I always say his name wrong. The heart attack guy. The one in the very beginning. Remember, the only witness. The last person to see these boys. We got to get into his story. We got to find out more about what he said. And I got to get back to smoking this joint. I cannot smoke this joint and talk at the same time. So we're going to watch this. I'm going to look up who owned that trailer. And we're going to get into more of the mystery of the Yuba County 5.
I believe much of this case hinges on the account of Joseph Shones, a rare type of witness as far as disappearances go, since he was present for the pivotal moment in the incident. His account of events, however, brings up many questions about his credibility. Shones told investigators that he had gone up to check the snow. When interviewed by the LA Times, he told them he had gone up to check on his cabin, but it appears he never owned a cabin up there. Shones lived in Sacramento, and the trailer home in Berry Creek he considered his vacation home. Much has been made of his account of seeing the rust-colored pickup at the scene, and whether or not he did, in fact, see the truck. He said he believed the truck to be a hallucination in his first interview, but during his second, he seemed certain it was real. In the first interview, he also claims that there was anywhere between 2 to 12 people in the area. If you actually take a moment to think about this, it makes no sense. That would mean that there was one car on scene, and somehow there could have been up to 12 people? How would they all get there? The first interview is basically sown with uncertainty about every important detail. Maybe there was 2 people. Maybe there was 12. Maybe there was a truck there. Or maybe it was a hallucination. During Shones' final interview with detectives, his story seems to have solidified. He gave a rather detailed description of the truck he claimed to have seen, right down to how it was parked, what color it was, when it turned its headlights on or off, but he does not describe how the truck left. It couldn't have headed further up the road because Bill Neal would be in the area the next day, and in order for him to get around the Montego, he had to dig a path through the snow. So if the truck was there, it must have turned back down the road. But Shones does not mention the truck executing a sluggish multi-point turn as it would have had to do. He simply says the truck left. This is the testimony that was presented in Part 1, and is Shones' final story that he told detectives, the definitive version if you will, but that in no way means it is completely accurate or truthful. To be very clear, here is a timeline of Shones' different stories. He told a story about being followed up the mountain to Mr. Robinson and his girlfriend, the folks who gave him a ride home. He then told the story involving the red truck to his wife Rosenda. Then during his first interview with authorities, he changed his story a bit, including the removal of the red truck. Finally, during his second interview with authorities, he includes the red truck once more. This timeline does not even include certain statements Shones made to the press, which provide even more contradictions to his story. I believe the key moment of Shones' involvement is actually what happened when he finally got back to the mountain house, where other witnesses were able to observe his behavior. Shones' statement that he should have done this 2 years ago was overheard by multiple people in the mountain house. Nobody could discern its exact meaning. Afterwards, while being given a ride to his home, Shones told a story about how he was followed closely by another vehicle as he drove up into the mountains. The car would not allow him to slow down or turn around, and he blamed the entire incident on this vehicle that was tailgating him. Obviously, this story does not match up with anything Shones would later tell detectives. The story he told authorities was that he drove up, got stuck, had a heart attack, fell asleep, and woke up to a car already parked behind him. This type of behavior is highly indicative of deception on Shones' part. I would submit that whatever story Shones was telling people before he knew there was a serious police investigation might be closer to the truth than whatever he told investigators in the days and weeks after the event. The story that Shones reportedly gave Steve Robinson and Laura Lynn Smith as they drove him home is also quite specific. The story has an air of anger and frustration. He was being followed and he couldn't pull over or get off the road. This car forced him to get stuck in the snow, so they were responsible for the stress he was suffering from. This initial version of Schoen's story is incredibly important because it sets the stage for what sounds like a possible altercation. Schoen was angry that there was a vehicle following him so closely, and due to the snow and the narrowness of the road, he felt he could not turn around or get off to the side. If Schoen gets stuck in the snow, then the car that was following him closely would also have to stop as there was no room to pass. In a situation like this, what would be the odds that Mr. Schoen would then get out of his car and confront the individuals that he believed caused him to get stuck in the snow? What if the car that had been following him so closely was the Montego, with the 5 men from Yuba City in it? Now, before we go any further down this line of speculation, we have to acknowledge a potential timeline issue. Joseph Schoen was seen leaving the mountain house between 5:30 to 6 p.m. He then began heading up towards the snow. The Yuba City boys did not get out of their basketball game until about 10 p.m. For someone who knew where to go, it would take a little over an hour to drive to Schoen's location. I imagine it took the Yuba boys quite a bit longer than that. This timing fits with Schoen's story that he was aroused from sleep around 11 p.m. to midnight by whistling and lights coming into the cab of his vehicle. But how then do we square this with Schoen's story to Mr. Robinson that he was followed closely by a vehicle? There are a number of different avenues of speculation one can go down when discussing this case, and one thing that is important to keep in mind is this. The reaction that these 5 men might have to a stressful situation is likely to be different than for the average person. To be clear, the following is purely speculation on my part, but using the evidence at hand and Schoen's own words to Steve Robinson, I could imagine a scenario where Schoen left the mountain house and traveled up towards the snow. He had just been to 2 different bars and reportedly drank quite a few beers over a short period of time. When he gets up near the snow, he stops somewhere along the road and falls asleep. It makes no sense for Schoen to actually drive all the way up into the snow at this point if all he needed to do was check where it was. The mountain house witnesses said themselves that Schoen was well aware of how easily someone could get stuck in the snow. He knew the area, he knew where to go and where not to. Continuing on, Schoen gets awoken around 11 p.m. to midnight by the headlights and whistling of the Yuba boys as they arrive and find the path blocked by the VW Bug. Realizing he is sitting in the road, Schoen starts his vehicle and begins driving up looking for a place to pull off or turn around. But the road is so narrow and the snow so prevalent that he can't find anywhere to do this. Eventually, Schoen gets stuck in the snow, blocking the roadway. This obviously makes him angry to the point where he attempts to confront the men who he feels forced him up the mountain. One point of evidence to support this is the fact that a driver's side window on the Montego was rolled down. When it's cold outside, one of the few reasons you might roll down a window would be to talk with someone who is outside. Schoen may have been confrontational with the Yuba boys. They in turn may have tried to leave, hurriedly attempting to back up. But much as Schoen experienced, the road conditions made turning around very difficult, and the back wheels started to spin. The Yuba boys then get out of their vehicle in order to push it, but an altercation ensues with Schoen. During a brief scuffle, Schoen begins having a heart attack. This scares the boys as they might have felt somehow responsible, and they flee the situation altogether, running up the road into the snow and inevitable death. This speculation is being generous to Schoen, who in his anger could also have threatened the Yuba boys in some way, forcing them into running away. After this event, Schoen had a very interesting and delayed emotional reaction to whatever happened, since at the hospital he began to cry uncontrollably for quite some time. Schoen's behavior in general is highly suspect, and while the different stories he told might all be untrustworthy, we are still forced to speculate with what we have. Schoen's stories, as well as the testimony of multiple witnesses who encountered Schoen or his vehicle around the time of the incident, are the information we have to work with. When Schoen told investigators that a reddish truck came and picked the men up, it sent people and resources elsewhere. Schoen made it sound like the Yuba boys got into a vehicle and left the area, while in reality it's almost a certainty that did not happen. All of this took scrutiny away from Shones and put it elsewhere. I think one thing is almost certain. Shones was hiding something. I think authorities believe this as well, but they had no real evidence against him. Shones' statement about how he should have done this 2 years ago also raises many questions. What did Shones do that night? According to the story he told police, all he did was get his car stuck and have a heart attack. He should have done that 2 years ago? His statement doesn't make much sense in this context, and makes one wonder if Shones knew one or more of the Yuba boys. Police tried very hard to find any potential connection Shones might have had with any of the 5 men, but they found nothing. Nothing that would show that Shones may have held a grudge against one of them. Shones did have a mentally handicapped daughter who lived with him and his wife in Sacramento. The Yuba boys had spent a lot of time driving to Sacramento for events and dances. It is unknown if they ever crossed paths with Shones and his daughter while in the area. The specificity of the words Shones chose also leads to questions. 2 years? What happened 2 years ago? The amount of time has popped up once before. Gary Mathias taking his meds roughly 2 years prior to the incident. Before that time, Mathias had been racking up quite a criminal record. And later, multiple witnesses had stories about Mathias committing assaults, seemingly at random. At least a few of these had gone unreported to police. Was Shones the target of one of these incidents? Something that went unreported but that Shones never forgot? With no real evidence to support it, it certainly feels like a bit of a reach. It leads to too many other unanswered questions like, how would Shones get the Yuba boys to cross his path in the mountains? Was it just some unbelievable coincidence, or something more insidious? This is a case that gives you just enough information to want to make these types of speculations, but nothing ever seems to completely fit. There are rumors that Shones was known to his community as a drunk and a liar. Shones would be arrested for drunk driving only a year after the incident. He had a criminal record, with grand theft auto likely being the worst charge he received, but nothing to indicate that he was necessarily dangerous.
So now we're pointing some fingers at Shones. And I think this makes a lot of sense, especially when you factor in the phone calls. I mean, maybe Gary was able to get to a phone, but his shoes being there with Ted, right? I'm getting their names mixed up. In the cabin, his shoes being there. It's a little weird, because why would he carry the other guy's shoes? It don't make any sense. So that's strange. The red truck, that kept changing in Joseph's story. That kept, making its comeback. It went away and then it would return. And we still haven't addressed the woman and the baby. Apparently, in Joseph's story, she comes and goes. So at one point, there's only 2 people there. And at another point, there's 12 people there. So, was there a woman and a baby? The only one saying that is Joseph. And maybe it's not true. And no, I don't think the hospital did confirm the heart attack. Right? Yeah, I don't know that there's any confirmation of his heart attack. But I did find out who owns the trailer. The Forest Service. So those trailers were owned by the Forest Service. And Diane thinks one of the military guys must have known about it. Actually, both guys that ended up in the trailer were military. Those were the only 2 military guys. Schizophrenic guy and the driver of the car. Those were the only 2 that made it to the trailer. I'm with you, Sandy. There probably was no woman with a baby. And yeah, maybe he saw double due to being drunk. Because he had been drinking that night. He had been to 2 bars. And, they said that he did drink pretty liberally while he was out. I guess they hadn't checked in a while because they say that he had at least been there 15 days due to his weight loss and his beard growth and all that. They factor he had been there at least 15 days before he starved to death. So they leave the basketball game at 10 p.m. They run into Joseph Scholl's car at 12 p.m. That's when Scholl gets woke up because he's blocking the road. But why are they on that road? You see what I mean? Why are they there? How did that happen? There's no reason for them to be there. They weren't going in that direction at all. And even if you factor in Gary's friend, that wasn't in this direction. They're 4 miles away from that. So how did they end up on this road? How did they end up out here? Why did they even run into Joseph Scholl? A lot of these boys, especially the ones driving, it's his pride and joy, this car. There's no reason he would let anyone else drive it. He doesn't like the wilderness. So why would he be going there? They got to get back for their basketball game. What are they doing there? Let's get into that, and I'll be right back with you on Conspiracy Theories and Chill and the mystery of the Yuba County Five.
Even after all this speculating, there's a piece that simply doesn't fit, and it is the crux of this case, the true mystery. What were the Yuba boys even doing up in the mountains at 11 p.m., far off course from their route home? What could have possibly lured these men up there? Especially when they had their own important basketball game to attend the following morning. None of the men were known to have had any particular interest in the mountains or the snow. In fact, they disliked it. Jack Madruga's mother was adamant that he would not let anyone else drive his car. She also stated that he had laid out all his basketball equipment in his room in preparation for the game the following morning. It appears he fully intended on making it back home that night. Madruga's mother was also emphatic that her son would not pick up any hitchhikers and would not stop on the roadway to give assistance to anyone except possibly a female, and only if they specifically asked for help. She was also adamant that her son would not drive his vehicle to the location where it was found due to his fear of the dark. She felt certain that he would not stray from the route to and from the basketball game. She would also say that she believed that if someone were to hold Madruga at gunpoint, he would obey. Were the boys lured up into the mountains after coming across a woman in distress? Or were they taken up there more forcefully? And there always remains the possibility that they went up there for reasons we simply have not considered. While some believe that Madruga simply made a wrong turn, I think that scenario to be unlikely. How far would they have had to go before realizing they were off course? Between the 5 of them, at least one would have likely noticed something amiss. It's pretty much a straight shot from Chico back to Yuba City where the men lived. This is the exit that Madruga missed, either on purpose or by accident. Afterwards, their path would have led them straight into Oroville, a city that they supposedly had no intention of visiting. If they were lost, they could easily pull over here and ask for directions. Instead, they made their way onto the Oro-Quincy Highway. Madruga had a fair amount of driving experience, having driven trucks during his tenure in the Army. There was many miles of road and a city where Madruga could have turned around if he had thought he was lost. At the time, Yuba Undersheriff Jack Beecham felt it was unlikely that Madruga simply got lost for these same reasons. The group should have been on Highway 99, but they veered off course for some reason. Madruga's mother would state that the group had never taken Highway 70 before during their many trips to Chico, so this diversion was very out of character. Whatever the explanation is, it appears to have been an intentional decision. Did the boys have some plan in mind when they traveled up that way? and running into Schoen's vehicle was just an unlucky accident? Or did something more sinister drive the boys up that way? Some have postulated that Madruga was not the driver of the car as it made its way into the mountains, but Madruga certainly had the ability to make the drive despite the dangers and roughness of the mountain roads. According to contemporary newspaper articles, the pavement on the Oro Quincy Highway ended at around 4,000 feet in elevation, with Madruga's vehicle being found about 400 feet higher than that, which amounts to a distance of under a mile. They didn't travel on unpaved road for very long. Other newspaper reports indicate that the vehicle was found just 200 yards into the snow line, so they didn't travel on snow for very long either. When Madruga was found, he still had his car keys with him. The coroner's receipt confirms that when he received the remains, part of Madruga's property consisted of 4 keys. So if Madruga had the keys, and he was the driver, why did he drive up to this area? Whatever happened at the location of the vehicles, it appears to have frightened the 5 men. A few of them were scared of the dark. A few of them hated the cold. None of them were likely in any hurry to endure both. The Montego was also left with a window down, something Madruga's mother contends he would never do. If they left willingly, most people would be inclined to travel downhill, especially when they know that that is the direction of safety. But the Yuba boys went up. Everything seems to indicate that they left in a hurry and perhaps out of fear. Their vehicle, though not necessarily stuck, might as well have been. Madruga likely had little experience driving in the snow, and being on a narrow road surrounded by snow, with nowhere to turn around, could easily create a stressful situation. We may never know why they were there, or what happened when they encountered Schoen's vehicle. We are left with a number of deceptive puzzle pieces that are difficult to fit together. Schoen's likely knew more than he let on, and the heart attack he had, whether it was real or not, only worked to give him a good alibi. Whatever he knew, he took it to the grave when he passed away in 2004. Everything that happened next, sadly, is not all that surprising. 5 men experiencing a traumatic fight for survival in unforgiving conditions. Given the fact that they were all wearing light clothing, it's a miracle any of them made it as far as they did. The 3 who died along the road to the fire camp would only end up being covered by snow during the storm that hit days later, adding to the fact that they were already outside of the initial search perimeter that had been set up. Matthias, the only one of the 5 who really had any survival experience, lasted longer than the rest. And it is just as likely he perished in the snow after making an attempt to leave the trailer. By that time, he would have been deep into starvation, his feet frostbitten. Matthias simply might have made it to an area further away than anyone had really considered.
And honestly, I think that's what happened. I think Gary Matthias is the scapegoat here. And Joseph Schoen's, however you say his name. I have a big problem saying people's name. I think it's him. I think he lured these boys there, got them to follow him there. I don't know how, but he got them to follow him there. And I think Sandy hit the nail on the head here. I think it has something to do with Joseph's daughter. They were all going to the same kind of events together. Joseph said he should have done this 2 years ago. Whatever he did, whatever happened that night, he was overheard saying he should have done it 2 years ago. He should have had a heart attack 2 years ago. Sorry. It's conspiracy theories and chill. I was smoking again. I almost coughed in your ear, and I don't know what's better. Or maybe I should have coughed, but that's what happened. But yeah, I think it had something to do with this daughter, Joseph's daughter. He would have known these boys' pattern. If it was for revenge, he would have known they were coming to watch this game. They followed that team everywhere. They were way into basketball, and they always did this. And he would have been part of those groups. I saw other theories saying that maybe it was some people that attacked them because they were disabled. You got to remember, this was the 70s, and there was a lot of that ignorant shit going on. That could have been it, but I think this was more of a revenge thing. I really do think Joseph was involved here. And yeah, Diane, why all of them? I don't know. Maybe that's the only thing he thought. I don't know. Because, it would have only been one of the boys that would have probably had some interaction with his daughter. If that's what it had to do with, that's just my theory. You got 5 boys around that age, and he's got a daughter that age that's involved in the same kind of groups, and he's wanting revenge for something. There's something he's wanting revenge for. And the phone calls are very suspicious. The phone calls bring me back to Joseph too, because the only other one with the mental acuity to make those phone calls would have been Gary. I don't think Gary made it out alive. I think Gary's body was just never found. Animals ate it, carried it off, and it was just never found. That's what I think happened to Gary. But that was the mystery of the Yuba County 5. It's unsolved. There's no way to know what happened. We did our best at trying to figure it out. I think it had to do with Joseph Shones. That he lured these boys to follow him to that abandoned road for some kind of a confrontation. And, like at the end there, it was talking about why didn't they go back the way they came? Go down the mountain. Why go up? They had to have been chased in that direction. It makes no sense. They had to have been chased. Something had to run them away from that car. So it was this prized possession. They still had gas. There's no reason to leave it. And there's definitely no reason to go up the mountain into strange territory. Why not go back the way you came? He had to have run them up there, forced them away. They didn't even have proper clothing. That's what I think happened. I think it was Joseph. I think he's the one that made those phone calls too. But what do you think? What's your thoughts on that? A lot of people still to this day, even his parents, blame it on Gary. They never found Gary. I don't think so, Robert. Robert wanted to know a medical question. I don't think anybody ever did that investigation. That's a good investigation. They should probably do. We could get to the bottom of a lot more stuff if we checked more buttholes. Something's wrong with Robert, He's special, but we love him. And the gold watch, though, the gold watch is still bugging me. I want to know about that. We never got to the bottom of whose watch that was. Where did the gold watch come from? And then how did they find that cabin? So let's say Joseph ran them off, chased them up the mountain to their death. Did they just by chance find this cabin with all the supplies? And, why didn't they take full advantage of the supplies when one of the people that found it was militarily trained and was the only one that wasn't mentally handicapped? He would have known how to turn the butane tanks on or the propane tanks on. Yeah, why don't they do some DNA on that watch? We find out whose watch that is. That could answer some questions. Didn't belong to anybody involved there. None of the boys. So whose watch is that? Is it somebody that works for the mountain service? Or the Forest Service, rather? There's a lot to know there. But that was Babel's topic. She suggested that. I thought it was really fun. It's not a regular conspiracy theory type of thing, but it's interesting. You know what I mean? It's a mystery. And, maybe there's something supernatural there. I think it's as simple as that guy chasing him up the mountain. You know what I mean? I think Joseph chased him up there and then realized what he had done and was reaching out, making those phone calls, feeling remorse. Not enough remorse to go and save them, but feeling remorse for what he had done. But it was a very interesting story. I enjoyed it. Babels comes up with really cool stuff. She's the one that recommended Ong's hat. What are some other ones, Babels? A lot of really good ones. So, yeah, maybe we could solve this mystery. You know, we could be like the Scooby Gang, solving mysteries and shit. That would be cool. But this has been Conspiracy Theories and Chill. I'm really glad we got a show tonight. You know, I was worried. I was feeling weak today. I was like, maybe we're not going to do it, but we did it. We pulled it off. I think it went really well. I had a good time. I hope you did. And if you did, come back next Wednesday. We do Conspiracy Theories every Wednesday, but Friday night, we'll be back with you. Friday night's rants. And I'm going to have to mix in some of this news because there's some crazy news going on. And this stuff is off the wall. It doesn't seem real anymore, does it? It almost seems like we should do news on Conspiracy Theory night. It would make more sense to do it tonight because it doesn't seem real. The actual mainstream media news. What? Man, I can't wait to get some of this homemade pizza. Making homemade spaghetti sauce and pizza sauce. It's time to eat. So that's what I'm getting ready to do. Now, I want to thank you guys for hanging out. And I had a really great time with you. I hope you had a good time. If you did, please consider supporting this show. The best way to support this show is patreon.com/Sean Yankee. That means the world to me. It helps us pay the bills around here. And it also shows me that you believe in what we're doing. You can donate, though, or you can visit our merch store. But just make sure you like and share and come back and see us Friday night. I had a great time hanging out with you tonight. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. I'll see you Friday right here. God bless.